The morning sun cast long shadows across the broken streets of what used to be Seoul. Kim Tae-ho pulled his worn jacket tighter as he walked through the ruins. 15 years had passed since the aliens came, but the city still looked like a war zone. Twisted metal and crumbling concrete reminded everyone of the day humanity lost. Above the city, the massive alien citadel floated like a dark cloud. Its blue lights pulsed slowly, casting an eerie glow over the buildings below. Tae-ho had grown used to seeing it there, but he still felt anger every time he looked up. The Korthok Empire ruled Earth now. Their leader, Overlord Zephyros, lived in that floating fortress and made all the decisions. Humans were nothing more than workers in their own world. They lived in small sectors, worked in alien factories, followed alien rules. Tae-ho reached the entrance to Sector 7, where most humans in this part of the city lived. 2 tall Korthok guards stood at the gate. Their crystalline armor gleamed in the sunlight. Their forearms moved with mechanical precision as they checked identification cards. "Work permit," one guard said in broken Korean. His voice sounded like grinding metal. Tae-ho handed over his card. The guard scanned it with a small device and waved him through. He walked past rows of gray buildings where families lived in tiny apartments. Children played in the narrow streets, but their games were quiet. Everyone knew that too much noise brought unwanted attention. At the end of the sector, Tae-ho met his friend Park Sun-ho near an old fountain that no longer worked. Sun-ho was shorter than Tae-ho, with quick eyes that never seemed to rest. He had been part of the resistance almost. "As long as Tae-ho? Any news from your sister?" Sun-ho asked quietly. Tae-ho nodded. "Ray says the aliens are planning something big. More security checks, longer work hours. I think we are getting too comfortable." Sun-ho spat on the ground. "Comfortable? Living? Like prisoners in our own home? Keep your voice down," Tae-ho warned. Even in the human sectors, there were always alien listening devices hidden somewhere. They walked together toward the old subway tunnels where their resistance cell met. The tunnels had been damaged in the war, but they still provided good hiding places. As they descended the broken stairs, Tae-ho thought about his sister. Kim Murray worked as a translator in the Alien Administration building. She was smart and learned the Korthok language quickly after the invasion. The aliens thought she was loyal, but she secretly passed information to the resistance. It was dangerous work, but someone had to do it. The tunnel was dark and cold. Water dripped from the ceiling, and their footsteps echoed in the empty space. Other resistance members were already there when they arrived. There were only 12 of them left. The group used to be much larger, but the aliens had caught many of their friends over the years. "We need to be more careful," said Lee Haeon, an older man who had been a soldier before the invasion. "The aliens are watching us closer now. 3 more cells were discovered last week." "Then we should hit them harder," Sun-ho replied. "Make them afraid of us for once." "With what weapons?" asked another member, a young woman named Park Ji-soo. "They took everything from us. We have nothing but rocks and old tools." Tae-ho listened to the argument but said nothing. He knew they were all frustrated. They had been fighting for years. With little success, the aliens were too strong, too organized, but giving up was not an option. After the meeting, Tae-ho walked home alone. The sun was setting, and the alien citadel's lights grew brighter in the darkening sky. He thought about the old days, before the invasion. He had been just a teenager then, but he remembered the pride people felt in their country, their military, their history. All of that was gone now. The aliens had banned everything that reminded humans of their past. No flags, no military symbols, no memorials. They wanted humans to forget who they used to be. Tae-ho's apartment was small and simple. One room with a bed, a table, and a small kitchen. On the wall hung a picture of his family from before the war. His parents had died in the first alien attack, but he and Murray had survived. He was about to sleep when he heard a soft knock at the door. It was Murray. She looked tired and worried. "I have something important to tell you," she said quietly. "The aliens are planning public executions. They caught some resistance fighters in Sector 12. Tae-ho's heart sank. When, 3 days from now, in the main square, They want everyone to watch. My Ray sat down at the table. There was something else. I found some old files in the alien archives. They had been studying human military history. Why would they care about that? I do not know. But they have detailed information about our wars, our soldiers, our symbols. They seem very interested in what they call warrior cultures. Taiho thought about this. The aliens had always seemed to view humans as weak and defeated. Why would they study human military history if they thought so little of them? The next day, Taiho decided to explore some of the older parts of the city. There were areas that had been abandoned since the invasion, places where the aliens rarely went. He wanted to find anything that might help the resistance. He walked through empty streets filled with debris. Most buildings were badly damaged, but some still stood. In one old neighborhood, he found the entrance to what looked like a military bunker. The door was heavy metal, painted green, with Korean writing on it. Inside, the bunker was dark and musty. Taiho used a small flashlight to look around. There were old desks, filing cabinets, and storage boxes. Everything was covered in dust and had been untouched for decades. In one corner, he found a large metal box with a lock that had rusted away. Inside were old military uniforms, medals, and patches. These were relics from the Korean War, long before the alien invasion. Taiho picked up one of the patches. It showed a fierce tiger with Korean characters below it. The colors had faded, but the image was still clear. He could read the words, "Indomitable Spirit." His grandfather had told him stories about the Tiger Division. They were soldiers who had fought bravely during the Korean War. Even when outnumbered and outgunned, they never gave up. They became legends, as Taiho held the patch. He felt something he had not felt in years. Pride. This small piece of fabric represented everything the aliens had tried to destroy: courage, honor, sacrifice, and the refusal to surrender. He carefully placed the patch in his jacket pocket. Tomorrow, he would show it to the others. Maybe it was just a symbol, but symbols had power. They reminded people of who they were and what they could become. Outside the alien citadel continued its slow patrol across the sky. But for the first time in years, Taiho felt hope. Taiho could not sleep that night. He kept touching the patch in his pocket, feeling its rough fabric and faded threads. The tiger emblem seemed to burn against his fingers, reminding him of stories his grandfather had told him long ago. His grandfather, Kim Da-sung, had been a young soldier during the Korean War. He used to sit with Taiho on quiet evenings and tell him about the Tiger Division. His voice would grow strong when he spoke of those days. "They called us the Tiger Division because we fought like tigers," his grandfather had said. "When the enemy came with more soldiers, more weapons, more everything, we did not run. Our ground, we protected our people." Taiho remembered asking why they never gave up. Because of this, his grandfather had pointed to his chest where his own Tiger Division patch had once been. This symbol means we have indomitable spirit. No matter how bad things get, we never stop fighting. We never surrender. It's now 15 years after the alien invasion. Taiho finally understood what his grandfather meant. The patch was not just cloth and thread. It was a promise. A promise that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The next morning, Taiho met Sun-ho at their usual spot. But instead of going straight to the tunnels, he led his friend to a quiet place behind an old building. "I found something." "Yesterday," Taiho said. He pulled out the patch and showed it to Sun-ho. Sun-ho's eyes widened. "Where did you get this?" "An old bunker. There were many military things there." Taiho held the patch up to the light. "This is from the Tiger Division. My grandfather served with them. You know what happens if the aliens find this?" Ilo looked around nervously. "They execute anyone caught with military symbols." "That is exactly why we need it," Taiho said firmly. "They are afraid of what it represents. They know that if humans remember who we used to be, we might start acting like warriors again." Sun-ho stared at the patch for a long moment. "What do you want to do with it?" "I want to show the others. Maybe it will remind them that we are not just slaves. We are the descendants of fighters." They went to the tunnel where the resistance cell was meeting. When Taiho showed the patch, The reaction was mixed. Some members were excited, others worried. "It is just an old piece of cloth," said Lihian. "How can it help us fight alien weapons?" "It is not about fighting with the patch," Taiho explained. "It is about remembering what it means." The Tiger Division fought impossible battles and won. They never gave up, even when things looked hopeless. Park Jisoo touched the patch gently. "My grandmother told me stories about the Tiger Division. She said they were the bravest soldiers in the war." "Brave soldiers who are all dead now," Li Hyan said bitterly. "Just like we will be if we start playing with old symbols." The argument might have continued, but they were interrupted by footsteps in the tunnel. Everyone went quiet and hid in the shadows. But it was only Mireille coming to find her brother. "I have bad news," she said breathlessly. "The executions have been moved. Up. They are happening tomorrow." The group exchanged worried looks. This was much sooner than expected. "Who did they catch?" Sunho asked. "3 people from Sector 12, but I think one of them is someone we know." Mireille's voice was shaking. "They captured a man named Kim Young-ho. He was asking about resistance cells." Taiho felt his heart sink. Young-ho was not part of their group, but he had tried to contact them several times. He was a good man who just wanted to help. "Where will the execution happen?" Taiho asked. "The main square in front of the Alien Administration building. Overlord Zephyros himself will be there to watch." This was unusual. The alien Overlord rarely left his floating citadel. If he was coming down for the executions, it meant something important was happening. "He wants to make an example," Li Han said grimly. "Show all humans what happens when they resist." That night, Taiho lay in bed thinking about Young-ho and the other prisoners. They would die tomorrow, and there was nothing the resistance could do to save them? Or was there? He took out the Tiger Division patch and studied it carefully. The Tiger's eyes seemed to stare back at him with fierce determination. The Korean characters below read indomitable spirit. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind. "We never surrender." An idea began to form in Taiho's mind. It was dangerous, probably impossible, but it might work. He thought about it all night, turning the plan over and over in his head. The next morning, he found Sunho at the fountain. "I'm going to the execution," Taiho said quietly. "We all are. Aliens are forcing everyone to watch." "No, I am going to do something there." Sunho looked at him carefully. "What kind of something?" Taiho pulled out the patch. "I am going to wear this. In front of everyone. In front of the alien Overlord." "Are you insane?" Sunho grabbed his arm. "They will kill you on the spot." "Maybe, but maybe something else will happen. Maybe people will remember who we are. And maybe you will just die for nothing," Sunho said angrily. "That patch will not stop alien weapons." "You're right. But it might stop something else. It might stop us from forgetting." Sunho shook his head. "This is suicide, Taiho. There has to be another way." "Tell me what it is then," Taiho challenged. "Tell me how we fight back against their ships and weapons and armies. Tell me how we win." Sunho had no answer. None of them did. The aliens were too powerful, too advanced. But maybe, just maybe, they had missed something. Maybe they did not understand the power of symbols and memories. Later that day, Taiho visited the old bunker again. He searched through more boxes and found other things from the Korean War. There were photographs of soldiers, old letters, and more patches. Each item told a story of courage and sacrifice. One photograph showed a group of Tiger Division soldiers, standing together. They looked young and tired, but their eyes were determined. In the background, Taiho could see a battlefield covered in smoke and destruction. These men had faced impossible odds and kept fighting. He put the Tiger Division patch inside his jacket, right over his heart. Tomorrow, when the alien Overlord came to watch humans die, he would see something else. He would see that the human spirit was not dead. That evening, Mireille came to his apartment one more time. "I heard about your plan," she said. Sunho told. "Me, are you going to try to stop me too?" "No." Mireille sat down beside him. "I think grandfather would be proud of you, but I am scared." "I am scared too," Taiho admitted. "But being scared does not mean we should do nothing. What if it does not work? What if no one remembers what the patch means? Taiho thought about this. Then at least one person will remember. Maybe that is enough to start something. They sat together in silence, looking at the old family photograph on the wall. Tomorrow would bring either hope or tragedy. But tonight, they still had each other. They still had the memory of who they used to be. Outside, the alien citadel continued its slow patrol across the darkening sky. But inside a small apartment in Sector 7, the spirit of the Tiger Division was awakening once more. The main square was packed with humans. Thousands of people stood in neat rows, forced to watch the execution that would happen in just minutes. Alien guards surrounded the crowd, their weapons ready. The message was clear. This is what happens. To those who resist, Taiho stood near the middle of the crowd, wearing the gray uniform of a maintenance worker. The Tiger Division patch was hidden under his jacket, pressed against his chest. He could feel his heart beating fast, but his hands were steady. Above them, the massive alien citadel had stopped moving. It hovered directly over the square, casting a dark shadow over everything below. Smaller ships flew in circles around it, their blue lights flashing like angry eyes. At the front of the square, a platform had been built. It was made of black metal and stood 10 feet high. 3 metal posts rose from the center, and thick chains hung from each one. This was where the prisoners would die. "Look up there," whispered a woman standing next to Taiho. She pointed to the citadel. "Something is coming down." A section of the citadel's bottom opened, and a transport ship descended. It was larger than the patrol ships, with gold markings. That caught the sunlight. The crowd grew quiet as the ship landed behind the platform. The ship's doors opened with a hiss of steam. First came the guards, tall aliens in ceremonial armor that sparkled like diamonds. They moved with perfect precision, forming 2 lines on either side of the platform. Then came Overlord Zephyros himself. Taiho had never seen the alien leader up close before. Zephyros was enormous, nearly 9 feet tall, with 4 powerful arms and skin that looked like polished stone. Her armor was more elaborate than his guards, covered in symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. The Overlord's face was angular and sharp, with large eyes that changed color from blue to purple as he looked around the square. When he walked, each step made a sound like thunder. Even the other aliens seemed afraid of him. Zephyros climbed the platform and stood behind a podium. When he spoke, his voice boomed across the square without any need for amplification. "Humans of Earth," he said in perfect Korean, "you will witness the price of defiance. Those who resist the Korthok Empire will face the same fate as these criminals." Crowd shifted nervously. Some people looked down at their feet, unable to watch. Others stared at the platform with expressions of anger and hatred. 3 alien guards brought out the prisoners. They were human, their clothes torn and dirty. Their hands were chained behind their backs, and they had to be dragged because they could barely walk. Taiho recognized one of them immediately. It was Kim Young-ho, the man who had been trying to contact the resistance. His face was bruised and swollen, but his eyes were still defiant. The guards chained each prisoner to a post. Young-ho was in the middle, between 2 other resistance fighters. That Taiho did not know. All 3 men stood as straight as they could, refusing to show fear. "These humans dared to oppose the Korthak Empire," Zephyros continued. "They believed they could challenge our authority. Today, they will learn the truth about human weakness." The Overlord raised one of his forearms, and the guards prepared their weapons. They were energy rifles that would kill instantly. The execution would be quick, but the message would last forever. Taiho knew this was his moment. If he was going to act, it had to be now. He took a deep breath and began pushing through the crowd. "Where are you going?" someone whispered, but Taiho ignored them. He moved forward, stepping between other humans who were too shocked to stop him. The alien guards noticed him moving, but did not react immediately. One human walking through the crowd was not a threat. Taiho reached the front of the crowd, just 20 feet from the platform. He could see Young-ho clearly now. The brave man was looking straight ahead, ready to die with dignity. "Execute them," Zephyros commanded. The guards raised their weapons. In seconds, it would be over. Tahoe tore off his maintenance jacket and threw it to the ground. Underneath, he wore a simple white shirt. On the left side of his chest, clearly visible to everyone, was the Tiger Division patch. The faded tiger seemed to roar silently in the sunlight. The Korean characters below it declared to the world, "Indomitable spirit." "Stop," Tahoe shouted as loud as he could. The guards hesitated, surprised by the interruption. Zefros turned his massive head toward the sound, his color-changing eyes fixed on Tahoe and then on the patch. A strange silence fell over the square. Thousands of humans stared at the small piece of fabric on Tahoe's chest. Many of them recognized what it was. Their grandparents had told them. Stories about the Tiger Division, about soldiers who never gave up. The alien guards started to move toward Tahoe, but Zefros raised his hand to stop them. The Overlord was studying the patch with intense interest. His eyes had turned a deep purple color that none of the humans had ever seen before. "You dare to wear the symbols of your defeated military?" Zefros asked. His voice was quieter now, but it still carried across the square. Tahoe walked closer to the platform. With each step, he felt the weight of history on his shoulders. He was not just representing himself now. He was representing every human who had ever fought for freedom. "This is not a symbol of defeat," Tahoe said clearly. "This is a symbol of courage. Soldiers who fought impossible battles and never surrendered." The crowd began to murmur. Some people were scared for Tahoe, but others were starting to remember. They remembered the stories their elders had told them about the Korean War, about brave soldiers who held their ground against overwhelming odds. "You are one human against the Korthok Empire," Zefros said. "What can your ancient symbols do against our power?" Tahoe looked up at the massive alien Overlord. "They can remind us who we are." As he spoke, something unexpected happened. Humans in the crowd began to stand straighter. A few of them stepped forward, closer to the platform. They were not armed, but they were no longer hiding. An elderly woman near the front of the crowd spoke up. "My husband wore that patch. He fought in the Tiger Division." A middle-aged man nodded. "My father, too." He said they never retreated. No matter what. More voices joined in. The Tiger Division never gave up. They fought for all of us. They would not want us to live as slaves. The guards looked nervously at the crowd. This was not part of their plan. They had expected to see fear, not pride. Zefros studied the patch more carefully. His forearms moved in complex patterns and his eyes shifted through different colors. For a moment, he seemed almost confused. "You think this piece of cloth makes you a warrior?" he asked Tahoe. "No," Tahoe replied. "I think being willing to stand here makes me a warrior. The patch just reminds me what that means." The Overlord was quiet for a long moment. Around the square, humans were whispering to each other. Some were crying, remembering loved ones who had died fighting for freedom. Others were angry, realizing how much they had lost. On the platform, Young-ho and the other prisoners were watching with amazement. They had expected to die forgotten, but now thousands of people were remembering what it meant to fight. "You would die for a symbol?" Zefros asked. Tahoe touched the patch on his chest. "Would die for what it represents. For the idea that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost." The alien guards were getting restless. They wanted to end this confrontation and proceed with the execution. But Zefros held up his hand again, keeping them in place. The Overlord's eyes were now a color that no human had ever seen before. Deep purple mixed with gold, swirling like a storm. He was looking at Tahoe, but also at something beyond him. In the crowd, and more people were finding their courage. They were not running away or hiding. They were standing together, united by the memory of what they used to be. The Tiger Division patch had done something that years of resistance fighting could not accomplish. It had reminded an entire crowd of humans that they were the descendants of warriors. Now, the question was, what would happen next? Overlord Zefros stared at the Tiger Division patch for what felt like hours. His eyes continued to swirl with strange colors, and his forearms moved in slow, deliberate patterns. The entire square had gone silent, waiting to see what would happen. Inside the alien overlord's mind, something extraordinary was occurring. The Korthok Empire had rules that went back thousands of years. They were a warrior race, and they understood the power of symbols better than most species in the galaxy, long before they had conquered Earth. Korthak scouts had observed human conflicts from space. They had watched the Korean War with great interest, studying how humans fought when they were outnumbered and outgunned. The Tiger Division had particularly caught their attention. The Korthok database contained detailed files about every major human military unit. They had recorded battles, strategies, and most importantly, the symbols that each unit carried. To the Korthok, these symbols were not just decorations. They were representations of warrior spirit. The Tiger Division patch had been classified as a symbol of undefeated warriors in their records. This was a rare designation, given only 2 military units that had achieved something the Korthok respected: victory against impossible odds. During the Korean War, the Tiger Division had faced Chinese forces that outnumbered them 10-1. They had held their positions for days without food or ammunition. When ordered to retreat, they had refused. When surrounded, they had fought their way out. When their equipment failed, they had continued fighting with whatever they could find. The Korthok had watched all of this happen. They had seen human soldiers die rather than surrender. They had witnessed acts of courage that reminded them of their own warrior ancestors. Now, as Zephyros looked at the patch on Taiho's chest, all of these memories came flooding back. The Korthok genetic memory was powerful. It contained the accumulated knowledge of their entire species. In ancient Korthok culture, there was a law called the Code of Warrior Recognition. It stated that when a true warrior symbol was displayed by someone willing to die for its meaning, even enemies must acknowledge its power. Zephyros had not thought about this law in decades. The Korthok had conquered so many worlds that they rarely encountered genuine warrior cultures anymore. Most species surrendered quickly when they saw the size of the Korthok fleet, but humans had been different, had fought for years, even when they knew they could not win. And now, 15 years after their defeat, one human was still willing to die for what his ancestors had believed in. The Overlord's eyes settled on a deep golden color. This was the color of respect in Korthok culture, though no human in the Square understood what it meant. You know what this symbol represents? Zephyros asked Taiho. Taiho nodded. It represents soldiers who never gave up, who fought for their people even when they knew they might die. You believe you carry their spirit? I believe their spirit lives in all of us. We just forgot it for a while. Zephyros looked out at the crowd. Thousands of humans were watching, many of them with tears in their eyes. They were remembering stories their grandparents had told them. They were remembering what it felt like to be proud of their heritage. The alien overlords. Massive form began to change. His forearms moved into a specific position, and his legs shifted into a different stance. The other Korthok guards recognized what was happening and looked shocked. Their overlord was preparing to perform the salute of warrior recognition. It was an ancient gesture that had not been used in over a century.
Ow.
It meant that a Korthok warrior was acknowledging the courage of an enemy. You display the symbol of the Tiger Division, Zephyros said formally. A unit that achieved victory through courage rather than superior force. A unit that chose death over surrender. The Overlord's voice had changed. It was no longer the voice of a conqueror speaking to slaves. It was the voice of one warrior speaking to another. By the ancient laws of the Korthok Empire, I am bound to acknowledge what this symbol represents. Slowly, magnificently, Overlord Zephyros began to rise from his position behind the podium. His massive form straightened to its full height. His forearms moved into precise positions. His legs came together. The alien Overlord was standing at attention. The gesture lasted only a few seconds, but everyone in the square saw it. Thousands of humans watched as the most powerful being in their world acknowledged the courage represented by a small piece of fabric. The Korthok guards were frozen in shock. They had never seen their overlord show respect to a human before. Some of them did not even know the ancient salute existed. When Zephyros relaxed his position, his eyes had returned to their normal blue color. but something had changed in his expression. He looked at Taiho with what might have been understanding. "The code of warrior recognition has been invoked," he announced. "This human has displayed a symbol of genuine warrior heritage. By our laws, he cannot be executed without trial by combat." Crowd erupted in confused whispers. No one understood what was happening, but they could see that something important had occurred. Commander Vorthok, Zephyros's lieutenant, stepped forward. "Overlord, this human is a rebel. He has violated our laws by displaying military symbols. It has displayed a symbol of warriors who earned our respect through their actions," Zephyros replied firmly. "The code cannot be ignored, even by me." Taiho was stunned. He had expected to die the moment he revealed the patch. Instead, something incredible had happened. The alien overlord had not just seen the symbol. He had understood what it meant. "Happens now?" Taiho asked. "Now you face the consequences of invoking warrior law," Zephyros said. "You will have the right to trial by combat. If you win, you earn the right to live. If you lose, you die with honor." The overlord gestured to the 3 prisoners still chained to the posts. "The same offer extends to them. They fought alongside those who carried warrior symbols. They may choose combat instead of execution." Young Ho raised his head as high as he could. "We accept," he said clearly. The crowd was beginning to understand. These men would not simply be executed like criminals. They would have the chance to fight for their lives. Zephyros looked back at Taiho. "You've reminded me of something I had forgotten. Your species may be defeated, but your warrior spirit survives. That deserves recognition." The alien overlord turned to address the crowd. "Let all humans witness this moment. Today, the code of warrior recognition has been invoked for the first time in a century. Your ancestors earned this right through their courage." As the crowd watched in amazement, Taiho realized that his desperate plan had worked in ways he never imagined. The Tiger Division patch had not just reminded humans of their heritage, it had forced their conquerors to acknowledge it as well. The symbol of the indomitable spirit had bridged the gap between species, reminding everyone present that true courage transcends the boundaries of race and culture. The trial by combat would take place in 3 days. This gave the humans time to prepare, and gave Zephyros time to explain the ancient laws to his confused officers. In the resistance tunnels, the mood was electric. Word had spread throughout the city about what had happened in the square. For the first time in 15 years, humans were talking openly about fighting back. "I still cannot believe it worked," Sunho said, as he sat with Taiho in the underground meeting place. "You made the alien overlords salute you." "He did not salute me," Taiho corrected. "He saluted what the patch represents. The courage of soldiers who came before us." Marae had been quiet since hearing about the combat trial. She was proud of her brother, but she was also terrified. "What if you lose?" she asked quietly. "Then I die fighting instead of living on my knees," Taiho replied. That is what the Tiger Division would have wanted. Other members of the resistance had gathered to hear about the confrontation. They wanted to know every detail about how Zephyros had reacted to the patch. The Overlord's eyes changed color, Taiho explained, and he spoke about ancient laws. "I think the aliens understand warrior symbols better than we thought." Li Hyun, the former soldier, nodded slowly. "My grandfather told me that some alien races respect military tradition. Maybe the Korthok are one of them. If that is true, then we need to find more symbols," Park Jizu said excitedly. "More patches, more medals, more things that remind us of our military history." The idea spread quickly through the resistance network. If symbols had power, then humans needed to reclaim as many as possible. Over the next 2 days, people began searching through old buildings, abandoned homes, and forgotten storage areas. They found Korean War medals, Vietnam War patches, and symbols from other conflicts. Each discovery was treated like a treasure. Meanwhile, in the alien citadel, Zephyros was facing questions from his own commanders. They did not understand why he had shown respect to a human rebel. "The code of warrior recognition is ancient history," Commander Vorthok argued. "It should not apply to these primitive humans." "The code exists for a reason," Zephyros replied. "It reminds us that courage can be found in any species. The humans who wore that symbol earned our respect through their actions, not their technology. But if we start treating humans as warriors, they might begin to think they can resist us. Again, Zephyros was quiet for a moment. Perhaps they should think that. Perhaps we have forgotten what it means to rule warriors instead of slaves. The alien Overlord had been studying the Korthok files on human military history. The Tiger Division was not the only unit that had impressed the Korthok observers. There had been many examples of human courage throughout their wars. "Prepare the combat arena," Zephyros ordered, "and make sure all humans in the city can watch. They should see what happens when their warrior spirit is tested." On the morning of the combat trial, the main square was packed again. But this time, the mood was different. Humans stood straighter, looked each other in the eye, and spoke in louder voices. Many people in the crowd were wearing small pieces of military equipment they had found. Old buttons, faded ribbons, and worn patches were displayed proudly on jackets and shirts. The alien guards noticed these symbols, but did not try to remove them. Word had come down from Zephyros that military symbols were to be respected, not destroyed. A circular arena had been built in the center of the square. It was 30 feet across, with low walls around the edge. This was where the combat would take place. Zephyros descended from his citadel in the same ceremonial transport as before. But when he emerged, he was wearing different armor. Of his usual black and silver, he wore deep blue with gold trim. This was the traditional armor of Korthok combat judges, the 3 prisoners. Young-Ho and his 2 companions were brought to the arena. Their chains had been removed, and they had been given simple weapons, metal staffs about 4 feet long. "The rules of combat are simple," Zephyros announced to the crowd. "Each human will face 1 Korthok warrior. If the human wins, he goes free. If he loses, he dies with honor." The first 2 combats were quick. The human fighters were brave, but they were weakened by imprisonment and facing trained alien warriors. They fought courageously, but were defeated as they died. The crowd was silent, but there was no shame in their deaths.
Nice.
They had died as warriors, not as executed criminals. Then it was Taiho's turn. He stepped into the arena wearing the Tiger Division patch on his chest. In his hands, he held the metal staff that would be his only weapon. His opponent was a young Korthok warrior named Zektar. The alien was tall and strong, with 4 arms that could attack from multiple directions. He carried a traditional Korthok combat weapon, a curved blade attached to a long handle. "Begin," Zephyros commanded. Zektar moved first, his 4 arms working in coordination to attack from different angles. Taiho dodged and blocked as best he could. But the alien's reach advantage was enormous. The crowd watched in tense silence as the 2 fighters circled each other. Every human in the square was hoping for a miracle, but they could see that Taiho was Uta. Then something unexpected happened. As Zektar pressed his attack, Taiho began to remember his grandfather's stories. It's not just about the Tiger Division, but about how they fought. When you were outnumbered and outgunned, his grandfather had said, you do not try to match the enemy's strength. You use your mind and your spirit. Taiho stopped trying to match the alien's reach and power. Instead, he began to use speed and cunning. He dodged under the alien's attacks and struck at weak points in his armor. The Tiger Division patch seemed to burn on his chest, reminding him of what it meant to have indomitable spirit. It meant never giving up, even when defeat seemed certain. Was skilled, but he was used to fighting opponents who matched his strength. He was not prepared for Taiho's desperate creative attacks. The human fighter began to land hits, small ones at first, but they added up. The alien warrior's movements became slower, more cautious. In the crowd, humans began to cheer. They were watching their representative fight with the courage of their ancestors. Zephyros watched the combat with growing interest. The human was displaying exactly the kind of warrior spirit that the Korthok respected. He was facing impossible odds and refusing to surrender. The battle continued for 20 minutes. Fighters were exhausted, but neither would give up. Taiho's clothes were torn and bloody, but the Tiger Division patch remained clearly visible on his chest. Finally, Taiho saw his chance. As Zektar raised his weapon for a powerful strike, the alien left his side unprotected. Taiho lunged forward with his staff, striking the warrior in a vital spot. Zektar stumbled and fell. The combat was over. The crowd erupted in cheers. Humans throughout the square were crying, laughing, and embracing each other. One of their own had defeated an alien warrior in single combat. Taiho stood over his fallen opponent, breathing heavily. The Tiger Division patch was still visible on his chest. It seemed to glow in the sunlight. Zephyros stood up from his judging position. The combat is concluded. The human Taiho has won his freedom through courage and skill. The alien overlords' eyes were golden again, the color of respect. You have proven that the warrior spirit of your ancestors lives on. You have earned the right to live. As Taiho left the arena, he touched the patch on his chest. His grandfather would have been proud. The Tiger Division's indomitable spirit had not died with the old soldiers. It lived on in their descendants, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The moment of truth had passed, and humanity had proven that they were still warriors at heart. The victory in the combat arena changed everything. Word spread from the city to the surrounding sectors, then to other cities around the world. For the first time since the invasion, humans had something to celebrate. Taiho became a symbol himself. People would point at him on the street and whisper, "That is the man who defeated the alien warrior. That is the man who wore the Tiger Division patch." But more importantly, other humans began to remember their own heritage. In cities across Earth, people searched through old belongings and found military symbols from their ancestors. American eagle patches, British regimental badges, French unit insignia, and symbols from dozens of other nations were discovered and displayed. The Korthok guards were confused at first. They had been told to respect military symbols, but now humans were wearing them everywhere. Commander Vorthok requested new orders from Overlord Zephyros. Let them wear their symbols, Zephyros decided. They have earned the right through combat. Make it clear that symbols alone do not grant freedom. They must be backed by genuine warrior spirit. This led to an unexpected development. Humans began to challenge the aliens to more combat trials. Not just resistance fighters, but ordinary people who had been inspired by Taiho's victory. Most of these challenges were refused. The Korthok had no interest in fighting every human who found an old medal. But some challenges were accepted, usually when the human could prove their symbol had genuine historical significance. These combats became public events. Humans would gather to watch their champions fight for honor and freedom. Sometimes the humans won, sometimes they lost, but they always fought with courage. Overlord Zephyros found himself in a difficult position. The Code of Warrior Recognition was ancient and binding, but it was also causing problems for the occupation. Humans were becoming bolder, more defiant. We should end this before it spreads further, Commander Vorthok advised. Cancel the combat trials and return to the old system. That would violate our own laws, Zephyros replied. The Code of Warrior Recognition cannot be ignored once it has been invoked. We must honor it. The alien overlord was beginning to understand something important. The humans had not been truly defeated 15 years ago. They had only been temporarily overwhelmed. Their warrior spirit had survived, hidden but not destroyed. In the resistance tunnels, the mood was better than it had been in years. More people were joining the cause, and they were bringing military symbols with them. We need to be careful, Taiho warned during one meeting. The aliens are still much stronger than we are. Symbols give us pride, but they do not give us victory. Then, what do we do? Asked Park Jisoo. We cannot fight their ships and armies. We fight their ideas, Taiho replied. They want us to think of ourselves as conquered slaves. We have to think of ourselves as warriors who are temporarily defeated. This became the new strategy of the resistance. Instead of trying to attack alien strongholds, they focused on changing how humans thought about themselves. They organized ceremonies to honor fallen soldiers from past wars. They told stories about military heroes to children who had never heard them. They turned the display of military symbols into acts of quiet rebellion. The aliens found this new form of resistance difficult to combat. How do you fight against people remembering their own history? How do you stop them from feeling pride in their ancestors? 3 months after the combat trial, Zephyros made an announcement that shocked both species. Effective immediately, he declared, humans who display genuine warrior symbols will be granted limited autonomy. They will be allowed to form their own military units under Korthok's supervision. The human population was stunned. They were being offered the chance to be soldiers again, even if it was under alien control. Commander Vorthok was furious. This is madness, Overlord. We cannot trust humans with military organization. We cannot ignore what they have proven, Zephyros replied. They are warriors, not slaves. It is time we treated them accordingly. The first human military unit formed under the new system was led by Taiho himself. He wore the Tiger Division patch on his new uniform, and his soldiers wore patches representing their own ancestral units. They were given limited weapons and assigned to patrol duties in the human sectors. It was not freedom, but it was a step toward dignity. More importantly, it was a recognition that the human spirit had not been broken. The aliens had conquered Earth, but they had not conquered the idea of what it meant to be human. As Taiho stood in formation with his new unit, he thought about his grandfather. The old soldier had been right about the power of symbols. They did carry the spirit of those who had worn them before. The Tiger Division patch on his chest was not just a piece of cloth. It was a bridge between the past and the future, a reminder that courage could survive even the darkest times. Overlord Zephyros watched the ceremony from his citadel. He had made a difficult decision, but he believed it was the right one. The Korthok Empire had always respected warriors. Now they would have to learn to work with them instead of simply ruling over them. The war for Earth was not over. It might never be over. But the relationship between the species had changed forever. In the distance, Myray watched her brother with pride. He had kept his promise to their grandfather. He had reminded the world that the human spirit was indomitable. The patch that had started it all continued to rest over Taiho's heart, a small symbol carrying the weight of history and the promise of the future. Without a word, the human warrior's emblem had changed the fate of 2 species. It had reminded the conquerors that some things could not be defeated, only temporarily suppressed. The spirit of the Tiger Division lived on, passed from one generation to the next, waiting for the moment when it would be needed again. That moment had come, and humanity had proven itself worthy of the legacy. The awakening had begun in the years that followed. The story of the Tiger Division patch would be told and retold. Children would learn about the day when a simple symbol forced an alien overlord to stand at attention. They would remember that courage comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the willingness to stand up for what you believe in. The patch had done more than save one man's life. It had saved the soul of an entire species, and in the end, that was the most important victory of all.